The light falters. The stars blink in dread. The circle turns, and one comes from beyond the endless night. By the bone that forgets flesh, by the silence that devours sound, by the scream that echoes backward into the womb, we summon the sign.
He whose arms are many, he whose face is a mirror to the grave, he who bears the profane crown. Oh, pale one, pale as the death of suns, show us your hollow eye, mark this soil with your thoughtless gaze! We have torn the breath from the children, we have painted the gate with their shadows, we have spoken the unword aloud! Let the earth remember, let the sky forget, let the flesh rot, and the soul weep dry!
In the time before gods, primordial beings existed in a chaotic realm that existed between the positive and negative energy planes. They knew nothing of death, and their will could shape space, matter, and even time around them. There were an uncounted number of them, most of which we will never know anything about. This seems to be a common element of a great number of alternate realities. A prime beginning, you could say. A few of these beings amused themselves by crafting their own timelines, their own realities, in what could best be described as experiments. The Dungeons & Dragons Prime Material Plane is one of these that is considered successful because it has the remarkable property of creating new, immortal, and omnipotent beings who can eventually find their way outside of the Prime Material Plane and join the original primordial beings, adding to their number. However, the Dungeons & Dragons reality, like a simulation on an incredibly powerful computer, has not run smoothly and according to plan. It almost crashed entirely once, and there is a possibility that if it ever becomes too glitchy and unreliable, the mighty beings who created it may just end it, like we would shut down a buggy program when it locks up on some coding error. You see, in the original programming, so to speak, the primordial beings, which are also known as the Great Old Ones, crafted a more balanced and direct flow of energy between the positive and negative energy planes. The first beings to exist within the Dungeons & Dragons universe were, like them, immortal and primordial entities. And they also enjoyed the activity of creating star systems, worlds, and organic life. They were like a simulation of the people who wrote the code, emulating the activity of learning how to write the code. A game within a game, where the ultimate goal was to pluck the ultimate simulations out of the game entirely and turn them into real people, from the Great Old One's point of view. They never intended the simulations to ever know what their true nature was until it was time for them to transfer out of the game and become real. The origin of the terrifying elder evil known as Atropus is where the game glitched so badly it almost got switched off entirely. For a more general and very informative background on what the beings within the Dungeons & Dragons universe know about Atropus and its origins, I highly recommend the video by Jordan on his channel. You can find it linked in the description of this video down below. My aim here is to take the known information from the lore and extrapolate on it, incorporating the more recent treatise written by Eric L. Boyd on the god Jurgle and the history of an ancient and very powerful species called the Spellweavers. Specifically, the point in their history where they attempted to ascend their entire race to a higher form of existence, and in doing so, nearly wiped out their entire species, broke the universe, and accidentally created the very first outer planes and the very first gods. To those of you who don't know, Eric L. Boyd wrote the source books for 2nd edition Forgotten Realms called Faiths and Avatars, and its companion volume called Powers and Pantheons, so he is certainly an authority on the topic and has continued to write new material on the Forgotten Realms for the last 30 years or so. Thus, I don't consider his treatise on the god Jurgle or the history of the Spellweavers to be fringe lore at all, nor do I see any reason why I can't share my own musings and theories on its implications to existing Forgotten Realms lore, particularly when it can add to other lore in ways that inspire cool campaign ideas in other fans of the game. In a nutshell, when the Spellweavers attempted to all ascend at once, they caused the realm of dreams to have a major blowout and spawned not only the entire astral plane, but caused all the other outer planes to pop into existence. I've mentioned elsewhere that this was due to the structure of mortal consciousness being massively magnified and causing the entire astral plane to manifest pseudo-realities divide up into all of the alignments that a sapient being can be, which is why each outer plane is so strongly tied to one particular alignment, from lawful good to chaotic evil. But was this due to all of the Spellweavers manifesting their mind into the astral plane and imprinting on it? No, it was just one of them, a being who was once called the Prime Mover. This grand manifestation channeled such enormous power through the mind of the Prime Mover, basically funneled pure positive energy through the Prime Mover's mind, which exploded out into its complete and full potential, and left behind a blasted and empty husk, now highly charged with huge amounts of negative energy, and with a twisted and utterly insane remnant of an intelligence, kind of locked into the final moments before the moment it exploded, where it witnessed almost its entire species wiped out because of its dismal and fatal failure to achieve ascension for them all. This husk is now the entity which has become known as Atropus, the world-born dead, which is all that remains of the Prime Mover's physical form, just a gigantic floating undead head, constantly trapped in mental anguish and afflicted with an emptiness so vast its very proximity can wipe out all life from an entire planet. It feels this emptiness as an eternal hunger, its only reprieve from the torment in the moments that it can drain all life from an entire world. It hungers, it moves, it feeds, and it moves on. Atropus is drawn to negative energy in the D&D prime material plane. It feels this energy over a vast distance thanks to its innate connection to the ethereal plane in a process called Necromantic Lensing. As every time a mortal creature dies, it releases a little burst of negative energy. The mere proximity of Atropus amplifies necromantic magic on any world it is near, giving spellcasters bonuses to their death-related spells. More chillingly, recently deceased creatures begin to spontaneously reanimate as mindless zombies. As Atropus nears further, the rate of reanimation increases, and even long-dead bodies can emerge from the earth. The setting itself becomes desecrated, empowering all types of undead. The most powerful, intelligent undead welcome this transformation, as through it they gain tremendous power, at least for a while. The problem is that Atropus is impossible to control or reason with. It's not at all interested in sharing power. Its motivation is pure evil, and its endless torment has driven it utterly insane. Not that there was much sanity left after its mind literally exploded into fragments with no possible hope of ever being restored. But there are so many sources of negative energy, it's almost impossible for Atropus to pinpoint exactly where life-sustaining planets are located or how rich and diverse the life forms on those planets are. Sometimes the most foolhardy undead will call out to Atropus and provide a beacon it can follow, but that's not any sort of solution to its limitations. What it needed, much like Galactus from the Marvel Comics universe, is a form of advanced scout that can track down the negative energy sources and investigate, reporting back to Atropus when it finds rich worlds full of life that Atropus can consume. What Atropus needed was a herald to seek out viable new worlds for Atropus to feed on. Approximately 93,000 years ago, the Spellweavers were preoccupied with transcending their long, rather complicated but still limited lifespans. One prominent figure in their many forms of research was a powerful necromancer named Kynokt, who was fascinated with the discovery of a sphere of entropy, a mysterious domain tied to the immortals and the very concept of true death. He believed it would allow his people to step beyond their strange cycles of reincarnation, and led a huge contingent of 6,000 other spellweavers in the construction of a continent-sized artifact named the Negation Lattice, in an attempt to harness the ultimate power of entropy. His first experiment backfired horrifically, resulting in the annihilation of 6 million other spellweavers and the shattering of a moon, raining destruction across an entire star system. Kynokt was not destroyed in this disaster. He was transformed into, as far as anyone knows, the first Lich to ever exist in the multiverse. But unlike those that have followed, he was not bound to any dark powers to fuel his undead existence with negative energy. His source of entropic power was the 6,000 other spellweavers who were with him within the Negation Lattice when it was activated. There were no gods to step in and stop this. The experiment was painstakingly shielded from the attention of the immortals. There was no afterlife in the outer planes for these souls of these victims of the Lattice to go to. They were bound forever to Kynokt, granting him, ironically, the very immortality he was trying to achieve for them all. His Phylactery was the transformed chromatic disc that all spellweavers use to control magic, which the disaster morbidly forged into a new artifact known now as the Algor Mortis. One of the profane glyphs that is inscribed into the Algor Mortis, the pallid sign as it has become known to scholars and to the cultists and necromancers, it is called the Unword, is a vital part of all subsequent rituals involved in the creation of a lich, in one of the most forbidden secrets of dark magic. Certainly not something to be openly discussed, as the secret cabal of undead known as the Twisted Rune will take a very keen and unwelcome interest in any who are foolish enough as to mention it anywhere that they or their many agents can hear it or read it. There are, of course, 5 other glyphs inscribed into the Algor Mortis. What they are capable of and the abominations that their use could unleash are the stuff of every celestial's most dreaded nightmares, every undead god or demon lord's wildest dreams, and absolutely top of every god of secrets list of things that must not, under any circumstances, become known to any being, mortal or immortal alike. For thousands of years, Kynokt was trapped in his own private hell, a dread domain within a nebula of entropy, with 6 million screaming and rage-filled souls swirling around the fragments of a shattered star system at its core. A dark halo of the 6,000 souls bound to Kynokt, who writhed in agony at its heart, neither living nor dead. That area of the prime material plane was forbidden, sealed off and guarded. Nobody could get in, and nothing could get out. forgotten as the rest of the spellweavers abandoned necromancy as an option and sought other ways to transcend death. Eventually, another powerful spellweaver, a master of the realm of dreams and a cosmic engineer who developed technology in magic that could match the power of the immortals to move entire planets from one location in space to another, began the fateful ritual of disjunction, attempting to move the entire species through the realm of dreams and into higher dimensional forms. The Prime Mover's fate is now known to you. On the material plane, every spellweaver colony was devastated as their massive magical furnace node crystals detonated due to the extreme backlash of pure magical power from the positive energy plane. What followed next was an era known to them as the Scrabbling. They are still in that era, and it is unlikely they will ever manage to repair the cosmic damage they have caused or ever return to the mighty civilization they once were. When the Grand Disjunction occurred, the backlash also blasted through the Forbidden Zone and into the nebula of entropy containing Kynokt, but his freedom was extremely short-lived. Such a massive spike of entropic energy drew the newly formed Atropus directly to him, folding astral space while it was still forming and appearing nearly instantly in close proximity to Kynokt, who was about to be trapped once again by the vast cloud of incorporeal undead around him. It was a feast of epic proportions for Atropus, and for a while after it had absorbed millions of souls, it kept Kynokt prisoner, feeding on Kynokt like a battery. But very soon it hungered for more. Taking the wretched yet still immortal remains of Kynokt, Atropus remade him with a massive infusion of negative energy, bound the 6,000 souls into the Algor Mortis, bound Kynokt's immortal essence to the prime material plane so that he could only ever travel into the border ethereal for brief periods of time and at great effort. Forever after, Kynokt was bound in servitude to Atropus, from tormented prisoner to eternal slave, free only to do his master's bidding. Kynokt, the Pallid Sign, is a much more powerful entity than your typical Archlich. As a spellweaver who has transcended mortality, his existence is viewed by all other spellweavers as a twisted mockery of their ambitions. They hate him. They hate everything he was, everything he did, and absolutely everything that he has become. That is really the key to defeating him. All life, from the most meek to the most mighty, are enemies of Atropus and its Herald. It is the great common ground of all living beings in the multiverse, or at least all the sane ones who are not part of some twisted death cult. The allies of Kynokt are likewise enemies of all other life. The demons and the demon lord Orcus are unlikely to do anything to stand in the way of Atropus, but even Orcus is opposed to the complete annihilation of himself, so he would only seek to use Atropus and its Herald to further his own goal of becoming the last free-willed being in the multiverse, ruling over all other undead until the end of time. Beings of light and life will mobilize their full forces, put all other conflicts on hold, and even form unlikely alliances to stand against Atropus, leading to the most epic assembly of power you can imagine, as the fight to defend worlds and realms from being snuffed out by Atropus and the Herald is actually quite a weakness of Atropus that could be exploited. If you can capture and transport the Herald to a far-off place, it might redirect the course of Atropus to some other realm. If you can somehow turn Kynokt against his master, or somehow destroy the Herald, it would slow Atropus down, reducing the damage he causes for everyone over a long period of time. But if you can use Kynokt to lure Atropus into a trap, it's possible to end the threat entirely. Time for a brief overview of some of Kynokt's powers and abilities. He is a legendary threat with a challenge rating of 28. He is a medium-sized undead humanoid with 6 arms. His head has a distinctly alien appearance with 2 pitch-black eyes, a ridge where a nose would be, no ears, and no mouth. He He has no natural voice and communicates only through telepathy, able to understand and project his words into any being that has a language. His skin is pale to the point of being translucent, but can appear a metallic black when using his necromantic powers, which is most of the time, as his entropic nature absorbs energy, even some wavelengths of light. This is, of course, an homage to his creative inspiration, Galactus and the Silver Surfer. So if you want to represent the Algor Mortis as a dark metallic surfboard he rides using his hyperspeed propulsion, by all means, that's exactly what was intended. His unearthly grace and entropic power also grants him an armor class of 24 and nearly 700 hit points. So while his strength is the same as your average human, his skill and supernatural powers still make him a devastating threat just in hand-to-hand combat alone. But as a spellweaver, he is as dangerous as a beholder, even without a massive horde of bolstered undead surrounding him and keeping opponents out of the close contact with him. Kynokt can absorb the souls of the dying, fueling his own strength and granting him the ability to hover and fly. He is a very powerful spellcaster on his own, but most of his more extreme abilities come from being bound to the Algor Mortis artifact. He can simply position the ring of the Algor Mortis like aiming a cannon and unleash enough negative energy to just disintegrate anything up to 300 feet in front of it. Thankfully, he can't alter the shape of the artifact, so the beam is only 2 feet wide. Still, it can punch a 2-foot-wide tunnel right through a castle, a great worm dragon, a demigod. So it's not much of a limitation other than the fact that he can only do that 3 times a day and needs to be absorbing a lot of souls in order to power it. By feeding souls into it, he can store up the power to craft black gemstones called entropic cysts, and when he does so, these gems create a profane area of effect 1 mile wide that grants Kynokt his special lair abilities. Within this mile, he can unleash death surges that strengthen all other undead. He can cause all the healing magic to be only half as effective, and he can use the power of the gem to sense the location of any living beings within the area. Because he is bound to Atropus and the material plane, he can only pass into or through the border ethereal for a minute before he must return. But in doing so, he can appear to just phase through solid matter like a ghost. He has true sight out to 120 feet, is immune to necrotic damage, cold, fire, lightning, all normal forms of damage, so he can only be harmed by magical damage. He can't be altered, polymorphed, teleported, or plane shifted. Even banishment is useless against him. For all the game stats and a bit of an essay by me on how to handle epic level threats in your games, please follow the link down below to my Fourthwall site, where you will find all of that info. Fourthwall members get a version of this video with a lot more information than this one, and members with annual subscriptions can ask me to make videos on specific topics. If you want to know a method of representing creatures with extremely high intelligence scores, or how player characters can defeat beings like Kynokt and Atropus, it's well worth checking out the enhanced content. But for now, my name is AJ Pickett. Thank you very much for listening, and as always, I'll be back with more for you very soon.